Welcome to the explainer. You know, most of us look at a burst pipe or a flooded basement and just see a puddle, right? A really, really annoying puddle that we just need to mop up. But if you dive into the source material from restoration professionals, a completely different, honestly, kind of terrifying reality emerges. Water damage isn't just a puddle. It's a biological and structural ticking clock. The very moment water breaches your home, a countdown begins, transforming everyday building materials into an all-you-can-eat buffet for mold and compromising the actual integrity of your property. So today, we're not talking about basic plumbing. We are treating water extraction as exactly what it is, a highly precise scientific rescue mission.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the anatomy of a flood, the ticking clock, the three categories of water, mitigation versus restoration, and finally, the science of drying. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Anatomy of a flood. To truly understand the physical stakes of water damage, we really need to look at a real-world environment. So, we're going to use a hyperlocal case study, Middletown, Ohio, to establish exactly why and how water invades a property. Because let's face it, water damage isn't just a random stroke of bad luck. It's actually often geographic and structural inevitability. Using Middletown as our microcosm, we can see exactly why some areas flood so much more disastrously than others. First off, you've got environmental threats like the Great Miami River, which creates serious intrusion risks during spring thaws. But we gotta look beneath the surface, literally. The soil itself is a huge threat. Butler County has these super clay-heavy soils. So instead of absorbing rainwater, the clay causes water to just pool directly against foundations and seep right into basements. Then add the climate to the mix. Extreme winter freeze-thaw cycles violently crack foundation walls and burst pipes in older homes. And finally, the infrastructure itself. We're talking historic neighborhoods with aging cast iron pipes that corrode and fail, right alongside outdated drainage systems that just get completely overwhelmed during heavy rainfall. Basically, the environment around your home is constantly testing its defenses. Section 2, the ticking clock. Okay, so we've established the where and the how, but the absolutely most critical element in water damage isn't geography, it's time, specifically 60 minutes. When water invades your home, you have this 60-minute golden emergency response window. Why is this specific number so absolutely crucial? Well, because water doesn't just sit there. It spreads. It actually engages in a process called wicking. Through capillary action, standing water gets absorbed straight upward into your drywall, your insulation, and your wooden framing members. It's like a giant sponge. If you don't start extracting that water within this very first hour, the moisture penetrates deeper and deeper into the building materials, setting the stage for permanent, totally irreversible damage. It is quite literally a race against physics. And when that clock keeps ticking, the damage just escalates. At minute 1, we've got saturation and wicking. Water is actively climbing up your walls. But take a look at what happens between hours 24 and 48. This is the danger zone. Within just 1 to 2 days of water exposure, dormant mold spores in your home actually activate, colonize, and begin to spread like wildfire through that new humid environment. If you miss that window, what was a manageable water event officially becomes a demolition project. The final phase on our timeline, 3 to 7 days, represents the absolute minimum time required by professionals for the complete structural drying process. You simply cannot rush this. You can't just point a fan at a wet wall for an afternoon and call it safe, you know? The timeline is strict, and the consequences of ignoring it are pretty severe. Moving on to Section 3, 3 categories of water. But time isn't the only variable here. We really have to understand that not all water is created equal. The threat level shifts dramatically depending on exactly where the water comes from. The strict standard for this comes from the IICRC. That stands for the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. They categorize water into 3 distinct classes. Category 1 is your sanitary clean water. Think of a burst supply line under your kitchen sink. Now, it's highly damaging for sure, but it's not an immediate biological threat. Then we step up to Category 2, which is contaminated water, often called gray water. This comes from things like washing machine discharges or toilet overflows that don't have solid waste. It contains contaminants that can actually cause illness. But here's a truly fascinating and dangerous detail. Category 1 water that just sits untreated for 48 hours automatically degrades right into Category 2. So time literally makes the water more toxic. Finally, we hit Category 3, which is grossly contaminated, also known as black water. And yeah, it is exactly as horrifying as it sounds. We are talking about raw sewage backups or flooding rivers. This is an active biohazard containing bacteria, viruses, and parasites that demands strict antimicrobial treatment and totally hazardous disposal protocols. No way around it. Section 4, mitigation versus restoration. So, understanding the sheer danger of this brings us to how we actually fight it. There are two terms in this industry that are super widely misunderstood, and confusing them can seriously cost property owners thousands of dollars: mitigation versus restoration. I want you to think of mitigation as emergency room triage. It's the immediate, rapid response designed entirely to stop the bleeding. Mitigation involves emergency water extraction, pulling up soaking wet padding, cutting away ruined drywall, and deploying heavy equipment just to stop the damage from spreading any further. This all happens in those crucial first 1 to 3 days. Restoration, on the other hand, that's the healing and physical therapy phase. This happens only after mitigation is 100% complete. Restoration is the actual act of rebuilding, replacing the drywall, installing new flooring, and painting the walls to return your property to its exact pre-damage condition. You absolutely cannot begin restoration until mitigation has completely solved the moisture problem. They are two totally different beasts.
And finally, Section 5, the science of drying.
Which brings us to the most complex and critical phase of the entire operation. How do we actually know when the mitigation phase is officially finished? Well, it elevates our understanding from just basic cleaning to a highly precise, measurable scientific goal. The goal isn't just making a wall feel dry to the touch. The goal is equilibrium. Equilibrium is the specific, perfectly balanced moisture level that building materials absolutely must reach to prevent secondary damage, like mold colonization or structural warping. Professionals use precision moisture meters to track this every single day. They don't guess, they literally don't pull their equipment out of your house until the data strictly confirms that your property's moisture levels have completely returned to their normal, safe equilibrium. So this translates into a really rigorous 3-step methodology. Step 1 is emergency extraction, removing those thousands of gallons of standing water to completely stop that wicking process we talked about earlier. Step 2 is structural drying and monitoring. And this isn't passive, okay? It's an active daily process of tweaking and adjusting equipment placement based on live moisture readings taken from deep inside the wall cavities. Finally, Step 3 is final verification. This is the critical moment where the hard data actually proves that equilibrium has been achieved. Let me tell you, if a company skips Step 3 and just leaves early, you will absolutely be dealing with hidden mold weeks later. It's essentially a precise checklist of survival for your home.
To execute all those steps, a standard DIY shop vac is about as useful as a squirt gun at a bonfire. Professionals arrive on the scene with massive truck-mounted extraction units, capable of moving thousands of gallons of water an hour. But the real heroes here are the detection tools. Thermal imaging cameras and specialized moisture meters allow technicians to essentially see straight through walls, pinpointing hidden pockets of water trapped in wall cavities and beneath subfloors that cheap, everyday equipment would completely miss. Then, commercial-grade dehumidifiers and high-velocity air movers are hauled in to aggressively pull that hidden moisture out of the materials, while heavy-duty antimicrobial treatments ensure that any developing pathogens are completely neutralized right on the spot. The absolutely crucial takeaway from today's explainer is that water damage is an active, highly aggressive biological event. It respects zero boundaries and exploits literally every structural weakness in a property. Which leaves us with a final thought. Considering just how fast water wicks and how invisibly mold can colonize, what hidden threats are ticking away behind your walls right now?